The beginning of the legend. What happened in July 1947? The story of Roswell doesn't begin in the town itself, but on the remote Foster Ranch, about 120 kilometers, 75 miles, northwest of Roswell. In the first days of July 1947, on the isolated grounds of the Foster Ranch, located roughly 120 kilometers northwest of Roswell, New Mexico, an incident occurred that would set off a chain of events with far-reaching consequences. The ranch foreman, William Mack Brazel, during a routine inspection of the pastures following an intense nighttime storm, came across a vast field of unusual debris. According to his later accounts, the debris field stretched nearly a kilometer long and several hundred meters wide. The material scattered across the area did not resemble anything from any known civilian or military aircraft, nor a typical weather balloon. The wreckage consisted of several distinctly different types of materials. What caught Brazel's attention most were fragments of an extremely light metallic substance resembling aluminum or tin foil. However, the material exhibited an unusual physical property. It had shape memory characteristics. When crumpled into a tight ball in the hand, the foil would silently and effortlessly return to its original, perfectly smooth form, leaving no traces of creasing. Another key component was a series of thin structural beams with an eye-shaped cross-section. Despite their lightness, they were extraordinarily resistant to bending, breaking, or any deformation by hand. Some of these beams bore inscriptions in pink and purple hues. The symbols were geometric in nature and did not resemble any known alphabet or writing system. In addition to these two main material types, Brazel also identified fragments of a hard, brownish substance with properties similar to bakelite or early plastic, but much lighter and impervious to scratching or cutting with a knife. There were also remnants of a parchment or wax paper-like material, sometimes fused with metallic foil using something akin to adhesive tape imprinted with similar geometric symbols. The total amount of scattered material was so great that, according to Brazel, it could have filled a large portion of a barn. Due to the ranch's location, its remoteness from the nearest town, and the priority of ongoing farm work, Brazel did not take immediate action. He collected a representative sample of the debris, including several larger pieces of foil and a beam fragment with inscriptions, and then stored them in a shed. It was only several days later, during a trip to the town of Corona for supplies, that he decided to mention his discovery. This information, relayed to the local community, triggered a communication chain that ultimately led to the involvement of personnel from the nearby Roswell Army Airfield, a critically important institution for national security at that time. The find ceased to be a local curiosity and became a subject of military intelligence interest. Reporting to the authorities. For some time after the discovery, the find remained William Brazel's private matter. Due to the farm's isolation and the vast amount of ongoing work, he initially did not deem it necessary to take immediate steps to identify the origin of the debris. However, the situation changed under the influence of a broader media context that developed in the United States in late June 1947. A key factor was the widely publicized sighting by pilot Kenneth Arnold on June 24th, which introduced the concept of flying saucers into public discourse and initiated a wave of reports of unidentified flying objects across the country.
On July 5th, Brazel traveled to the nearby town of Corona for farm-related errands. There, he encountered widespread discussions and press reports about phenomena observed in the sky. At this moment, he connected the characteristics of the materials he had found with the ongoing nationwide debate. Media descriptions and accounts from other witnesses caused his find to cease being perceived as a local anomaly and began to appear as potential physical evidence in a case that was captivating public attention and authorities. Concluding the information he possessed might have national security implications or at least required investigation by appropriate authorities, Brazel decided to formally report the matter. The next day, July 6th, he went to Roswell, the county seat of Chavez County, and proceeded to Sheriff George Wilcox's office. He presented the sheriff with a description of the find and brought some of the collected samples, including fragments of metallic foil with shape memory and a piece of a beam with hieroglyphic markings. Sheriff Wilcox, after reviewing Brazel's account and a preliminary inspection of the provided material, determined that the matter extended beyond the competence of the local sheriff's office. The nature of the materials and their potential connection to a flying object of unknown origin indicated the necessity of military involvement. Following procedures, Wilcox contacted the command of the nearby Roswell Army Airfield by telephone. This call was a pivotal moment that formally initiated the military response to the incident and shifted the burden of further investigation from civilian law enforcement to the structures of the United States Army. Military intervention. The contact made by Sheriff Wilcox with Roswell Army Airfield initiated the standard military response procedure for a potential threat in the vicinity of a strategically important installation. The RAAF base in 1947 was not a typical unit. It was home to the 509th Bomb Group, the only formation in the world equipped and trained to conduct strikes using nuclear weapons. Any report of an unidentified flying object or a potential aircraft crash site in its close proximity was by definition treated as a matter of utmost national security importance. The report from the sheriff was relayed within the base's command structure and reached Major Jesse Marcel. As the intelligence officer of the 509th Bomb Group, Marcel was responsible for analyzing all information that could pose a threat or have intelligence value. His task was to assess the situation, verify reports, and secure any potential evidence. Pursuant to the orders he received, Major Marcel, accompanied by Counterintelligence Officer Captain Sheridan Cavett, traveled with William Brazel to his property. The mission's objective was to inspect the crash site, verify the credibility of the report, and secure evidentiary material. Upon arrival, Marcel and Cavett conducted an examination of the debris field. The vastness of the area over which the material was scattered and its unique physical properties immediately confirmed that this was not the wreckage of a conventional aircraft or a standard weather balloon. In his later, frequently repeated accounts, given after his military service concluded, Marcel consistently maintained that the materials encountered were incomparable to anything he had known from his previous military and technical experience. He placed particular emphasis on the properties of the metallic foil, its shape memory, and the incredible strength and lightness of the structural elements. It was in these accounts that he used the phrase that the material looked as if it was not of this world. Acting in accordance with procedures, Marcel supervised the collection of a representative sample of the debris. The amount of material secured was substantial, enough to fill the trunk and back seat of his official Buick. After concluding operations at the site, Jesse Marcel returned with the collected evidence directly to Roswell Army Airfield. From that moment on, the physical remnants of the incident, as well as the further conduct of the investigation, were solely within the purview of the United States Army. The announcement that shook the world. Following Major Jesse Marcel's return to Roswell Army Airfield with the secured evidence, further actions escalated to the highest command level of the unit. Colonel William Blanchard, commander of the 509th Bomb Group, after reviewing the intelligence officer's report and conducting a preliminary inspection of the unusual debris, made an unprecedented decision to immediately inform the public. The execution of this task was assigned to the base's public information officer, Lieutenant Walter Haut. On July 8, 1947, acting on direct orders from Colonel Blanchard, Haut drafted and released a brief but extremely impactful press statement to local media, including radio stations KGFL and KSWS and the Roswell Daily Record newspaper. Its wording was unambiguous and devoid of any attempts to soften the message. The press release began with the words, "The many rumors regarding the flying disc became a reality yesterday when the intelligence officer of the 509th Bomb Group, Roswell Army Airfield, was fortunate enough to gain possession of a disc." This short but categorically phrased declaration triggered an immediate reaction. Local journalists promptly relayed the content of the communiqué to national news agencies such as the Associated Press, AP. Within just a few hours, the news of the Army's capture of a flying saucer spread across the entire United States, hitting newspaper front pages and becoming the main topic of radio broadcasts from coast to coast. The authority of the source, an elite nuclear unit of the United States Army Air Forces, gave this information unprecedented weight and credibility. Unlike previous reports from civilian witnesses, this time official confirmation came directly from the military. For a brief period, the public was convinced that the U.S. Army possessed physical evidence of technology of unknown, potentially extraterrestrial origin. The swift denial. The media and public reaction sparked by Lieutenant Haut's communiqué was immediate and intense, but the counteraction from higher Army command was equally swift and decisive. The news of the Roswell base personnel's acquisition of a flying disc caused an alarm within the 8th Air Force structures headquartered at Fort Worth Army Airfield in Texas. Colonel Blanchard received orders to immediately downplay the matter and hand over all materials for further analysis. Major Jesse Marcel was obligated to promptly transport the collected debris to Fort Worth to present it to General Roger Ramey, commander of the 8th Air Force.
The press representatives and photographers were just presented with these substitute remains. A series of photographs was then taken, which became an iconic element of the entire case. In these photos, Major Jesse Marcel is seen crouching by the remnants of a weather balloon, pointing to fragments that were allegedly the flying saucer. The official Army statement was unequivocal. The entire incident was the result of an unfortunate mistake by the Roswell base personnel, who, lacking the proper knowledge, misidentified a conventional meteorological device. General Ramey emphasized that the military was not in possession of any flying saucer. This version of events, supported by the authority of the general and the physical presentation of the material, though different from what was originally found, was accepted by the media without significant objection. In the context of the Cold War and public trust in the armed forces, the official military denial effectively ended the sensation. Newspapers that had run headlines in the morning about a UFO capture were publishing corrections and explanations about a balloon by the evening. Within just a few hours, the Roswell incident ceased to be evidence of alien technology and became an example of media hysteria and a military error. Consequently, the matter was closed and its details faded from public awareness for over 30 years. The revival of the myth and the birth of conspiracy theories. For the next 3 decades, the Roswell incident existed in the public consciousness solely within the framework of the officially established version of events. It was occasionally cited as an example of a military mistake and media overzealousness, but it was not the subject of serious study or public debate. The explanation involving a weather balloon was widely accepted,
and the matter fell into near-total obscurity. This status changed radically in the late 1970s, largely due to the efforts of one researcher, Stanton T. Friedman, a nuclear physicist and ufologist who undertook the task of reconstructing the events of July 1947 based on original sources and eyewitness accounts. Interview with Jesse Marcel. A key element of Friedman's investigation was locating the principal participants of the events. In 1978, he managed to reach Major Jesse Marcel, who had already retired. In a series of interviews, Marcel publicly and in detail for the first time contradicted the official version of events, which he himself had represented at the 1947 press conference. His testimony became the cornerstone of the new interpretation of the incident. The retired officer categorically stated that the story about the weather balloon had been a fabricated cover story imposed on him by his superiors from the beginning. He maintained with absolute certainty that the materials he personally collected at the Brazel Ranch and transported to Fort Worth had nothing whatsoever to do with what was later shown to the press. He claimed that a deliberate substitution had occurred. The authentic remains were taken by General Ramey's staff for further secret analysis, while pre-prepared Rowan balloon debris was put in their place, forcing him to pose with it in front of photographers. Marcel again described the physical properties of the original materials, emphasizing their extraterrestrial nature. He spoke of a foil that could not be crushed, extremely light yet durable structural beams, and purple symbols inscribed on them, which he described as a form of indecipherable hieroglyphs. Marcel's account, coming from a high-ranking eyewitness who had been central to the original investigation, fundamentally challenged the official government narrative. His testimony gave rise to the modern Roswell conspiracy theory, suggesting that in 1947, the U.S. military not only recovered the wreckage of an extraterrestrial craft, but also took deliberate steps to conceal the fact from the public.
Jesse Marcel's public testimony acted as a catalyst, breaking a 30-year silence surrounding the events. His revelations opened the door for others who had previously feared consequences or considered their memories too improbable to share. New witnesses, both civilian and former military personnel, began to come forward, and their accounts dramatically expanded the original narrative. The story was no longer only about metal debris. Reports began to emerge about a second, primary crash site where a more intact section of the craft was allegedly located. Most importantly, the claims of recovered alien bodies appeared, an element that would forever alter the face of the Roswell incident. Particularly significant was the testimony of Glenn Dennis, a local funeral home director at Ballard Funeral Home. Dennis claimed that in July 1947, he received a series of unusual phone calls from the RAAA base. Military personnel inquired about the availability of small, hermetically sealed coffins and about specialized embalming procedures for bodies that might be exposed to external elements. According to his account, an even more shocking encounter occurred with a nurse he knew who worked at the base hospital. In strict secrecy and with visible fear, she described her involvement in examining or performing preliminary autopsies on several small humanoid beings. Her description of their physical features included disproportionately large heads on frail bodies, large, deeply set eyes, and rudimentary noses and mouths resembling narrow slits. Simultaneously, other witnesses began to come forward, describing a wide-ranging military operation. They spoke of military cordons blocking access to the crash sites and systematic intimidation. These accounts mentioned visits from intelligence officers who made residents offers they could not refuse, threatening them and their families with severe consequences if they revealed anything they had seen or heard. The enforcement of silence became an integral part of the new narrative. In just a few years of research and publications, the Roswell story underwent a fundamental transformation. What had once been a report of a crashed disk evolved into a complex tale of a manned spacecraft disaster, the recovery of its crew's bodies, and an unprecedented cover-up operation by the U.S. government, portrayed as the greatest conspiracy in history. The core pillars of the conspiracy theory, the modern Roswell legend shaped over decades of research, publications, and witness accounts, rests on several interrelated and mutually reinforcing pillars. These fundamental assumptions form a coherent, though controversial, narrative about one of the most significant events in human history.
The first and absolutely central element is the belief in the crash of an extraterrestrial craft. This is the foundation on which the entire theory is built. According to this assumption, the desert areas of New Mexico in early July 1947 did not witness the fall of a balloon, a secret plane, or any other human-made object. It is believed that a vessel from an alien civilization passed through the Earth's atmosphere and, for unknown reasons, malfunctioned. Perhaps it was damaged by a violent storm, a technical failure occurred, or, according to some more radical versions of the theory, it was even shot down. Regardless of the cause, the craft supposedly suffered catastrophic decompression or exploded at high altitude, scattering debris over a wide area, the debris field that William Brazel later discovered. Another part of the craft, possibly more intact, was said to have struck the ground at some distance, forming a second, primary crash site. This hypothesis draws strength from the characteristics of the materials recovered, which, in the view of believers, bear no resemblance to technology available at the time. The uncrushable foil with shape memory properties, beams as light as wood yet as strong as steel, and the incomprehensible hieroglyphic-like symbols are considered irrefutable evidence that something not made on Earth had fallen. The rest of the Roswell mythology, including the discovery of bodies and the government cover-up operation, is a logical consequence of this single central event. The second element, inextricably linked to the crash and giving the Roswell legend its dark and deeply human dimension, is the discovery of alien bodies. If the recovered debris served as evidence of alien technology, then the alleged crew represented proof of extraterrestrial intelligence, something that would irreversibly alter humanity's understanding of its place in the universe. According to accounts that surfaced over the years, the craft's passengers perished in the crash. While securing the site, the military allegedly encountered not only fragments of the vehicle, but also the bodies of its pilots. Descriptions of these beings, repeated in numerous testimonies and studies, coalesced into an archetype that became permanently embedded in global pop culture as the image of the so-called gray alien. These were said to be small, fragile-bodied beings, no taller than 1 to 1.5 meters, with smooth, hairless skin in shades of gray or beige. The most distinctive feature of their appearance was disproportionately large, pear-shaped heads dominated by enormous, pupil-less black eyes in an almond shape, giving them a simultaneously delicate and unsettling look. Their faces lacked distinct features with only rudimentary openings for the nose and mouth.
The operation to recover the bodies was allegedly carried out in complete secrecy, after which the remains were transported to the base hospital in Roswell or to another, even more secure military facility. There they were reportedly subjected to secret examinations and autopsies. This aspect of the story transforms the incident from a technical problem into a biological and existential one. It was no longer merely about recovering technology. It was about studying and understanding a form of life that had evolved in a completely different part of the universe. The third and equally crucial pillar of the legend, which unites the crash and the recovery of bodies into a coherent narrative, concerns a massive conspiracy and cover-up operation. It posits that the highest levels of the U.S. military and government almost immediately recognized the unprecedented significance of the discovery. Once it was confirmed that the recovered debris and bodies were not of terrestrial origin, a large-scale, multi-level operation was launched to completely conceal this fact from the public, allies, and enemies.
The motivation for such drastic measures was threefold. First, there was the need to avoid global panic. The revelation of the existence and presence of an extraterrestrial civilization could have caused unpredictable shocks to global stability, religious systems, and fundamental social structures, an unacceptable risk in the unstable post-World War II era. Second, maintaining and expanding technological superiority was equally crucial. Recovering a spacecraft offered an unimaginable opportunity to study and replicate its advanced technology through reverse engineering. In the early Cold War period, such knowledge was priceless and could not under any circumstances fall into Soviet hands. Third, there was the desire to maintain absolute control over one of the most significant pieces of information in human history. A government in possession of such knowledge and technology would wield unquestioned dominance. To achieve these goals, a two-pronged strategy was implemented. Publicly, a disinformation campaign was launched, culminating in the meteorological balloon story designed to discredit and ridicule the entire event. Privately, a systematic campaign of intimidation and silencing of all eyewitnesses, both civilian and military, was carried out. Threats, appeals to national security, and the imposition of top-secret classifications created a wall of silence that effectively lasted for over 3 decades. The mysterious Area 51 and MJ-12. Conducting a cover-up on this scale required not only effective disinformation, but also the creation of a secure logistical and organizational infrastructure. The debris recovered from the New Mexico desert, along with the bodies of the crew, represented the most valuable and simultaneously most dangerous secret in the world, and therefore had to be placed in a location ensuring absolute isolation and security. This is how the Roswell legend became intertwined with other influential theories and myths regarding secret government programs. It is believed that immediately after the incident, all collected evidence was transported to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Ohio, already a central hub for research on advanced aviation technologies and analysis of captured enemy equipment. There, in the legendary Hangar 18, the first preliminary studies of extraterrestrial technology were reportedly conducted. However, as the project gained momentum, a new, even more isolated and inaccessible location was required. Over time, the spacecraft debris and possibly the alien bodies preserved in cryogenic conditions were allegedly transferred to a secret facility in the Nevada desert, later publicly known as Area 51. This remote base, officially a testing ground for secret spy aircraft, became in UFO mythology synonymous with the site where reverse engineering of alien technology is conducted and where the government stores its most closely guarded secrets.
Government explanations, Project Mogul, and dummies. The growing popularity of the Roswell legend, fueled by numerous books, documentaries, and increasing media attention, eventually created pressure that the U.S. authorities had to address. Investigations conducted by researchers, combined with pressure from certain politicians, including a congressman from New Mexico, led to a formal commission to re-examine the case. As a result, in the 1990s, the United States Air Force published 2 comprehensive reports aimed at providing final explanations for the events of July 1947 based on declassified documents. The first of these reports, titled The Roswell Report, Fact versus Fiction in the New Mexico Desert, was published in 1994. Its content focused on the original aspect of the incident, the nature of the debris found on the Brazel Ranch. The official USAF position presented in the report represented a significant correction to the story told for decades. The government acknowledged that the object involved in the crash was not an ordinary weather balloon, lending some credibility to witness accounts describing its unusual nature. However, It explained that the actual source of the debris was the highly classified Project Mogul. This project was a key component of U.S. intelligence in the early Cold War, designed to lift long chains of balloons to high altitudes equipped with extremely sensitive microphones. These devices were meant to drift in the stratosphere, listening for low-frequency sound waves generated by potential Soviet atomic bomb tests thousands of kilometers away. It was precisely the secretive and technologically advanced nature of the project that caused the confusion. The report detailed why the debris from Project Mogul's balloons could have been misinterpreted as extraterrestrial. The assembly included materials completely unfamiliar to civilians in 1947. Among them were durable neoprene balloons and, most importantly, radar reflectors used to track the flight of the entire array. These reflectors were lightweight constructions made of balsa wood and metallicized foil joined with specialized adhesive tape. The report revealed that the tape, supplied by a toy manufacturer, featured printed geometric patterns in pink and purple. These factory markings, rather than alien writing, were likely the hieroglyphs that had so fascinated Jesse Marcel. The top-secret classification of Project Mogul also explained the military's seemingly chaotic response. The personnel at Roswell, unaware of the program's existence, could initially have believed they were encountering something extraordinary. Once the information reached higher command, fully aware of the project's importance, a decision to employ disinformation was made immediately. Revealing the existence of Project Mogul was entirely impossible, so one false story, the flying saucer, was replaced by another, far more plausible and safer narrative, that of an ordinary weather balloon.
The second report, with an even more definitive title, the Roswell Report, Case Closed, was published in 1997 on the 50th anniversary of the incident. This document focused entirely on the most challenging and sensational element of the expanded legend, the alleged discovery of alien bodies. The official explanation presented by the U.S. Air Force was detailed, relying on psychological analysis and a chronological arrangement of historical facts. The report concluded that the accounts of alien bodies were not deliberate falsehoods, but the result of phenomena known as time compression and memory contamination. The authors argued that, after several decades, witnesses unconsciously merged two or more separate and unrelated events in their memories into a single coherent but inaccurate story. A key aspect of this explanation involved reference to a series of military experiments conducted in New Mexico during the 1950s, several years after the 1947 crash. As part of research programs such as Project High Dive, the Air Force conducted numerous tests using anthropomorphic dummies. These human-shaped figures were dropped from stratospheric balloons or aircraft at very high altitudes to test new parachute systems, ejection seats, and the effects of extreme G-forces on the human body. The dummies, often damaged upon impact, could have been discovered by unsuspecting civilians in the desert or transported by military personnel under the supervision of doctors. The USAF suggested that the sight of such small humanoid bodies, observed from a distance or described secondhand, may have merged in witnesses' memories with earlier recollections of the mysterious debris from 1947, creating the mythologized story of a crude spacecraft crash. In this way, the official explanation did not deny that witnesses may have seen something. It simply placed these observations within a completely different historical and technological context. The publication of both reports established a final line in the Roswell debate. For conspiracy theorists and much of the UFO community, the documents were merely another, more sophisticated layer of a government disinformation campaign, an attempt to rationalize facts that could no longer be hidden. For skeptics and historians, however, the USAF reports were a logical, rational, and detailed explanation of the entire mystery, dismantling the legend step by step and reducing each
extraterrestrial element to secret but entirely terrestrial military projects from the Cold War era.
The climax of the Roswell Legends revival in the 1990s, and its most sensational moment, came with the emergence of alleged visual evidence. In 1995, at the height of public debate, London-based music and video producer Ray Santilli claimed to have obtained film footage documenting the autopsy of an extraterrestrial being recovered after the Roswell crash. The footage, known as Alien Autopsy, Fact or Fiction, instantly became a global phenomenon. Broadcast in a special television program on Fox in the United States and on networks worldwide, it drew tens of millions of viewers. The grainy black-and-white film depicted a scene that appeared lifted straight from a secret military archive. In a sterile, mortuary-like room, individuals wearing white protective suits, reminiscent of those used in biological contamination scenarios, performed an autopsy on a body lying on an operating table. The body closely matched witness descriptions: a small humanoid being with a large bulbous head, oversized black eyes, and a frail body bearing a deep wound on its thigh. The camera followed the pathologists slowly and methodically as they opened the creature's abdominal cavity and removed unknown dark internal organs. Santilli claimed he purchased the film from a retired anonymous military cameraman who had secretly made a copy of the original footage recorded in 1947. The footage caused a huge uproar and split the UFO research community. For some, it was the ultimate indisputable proof, the so-called smoking gun, confirming the entire legend. For others, it raised serious doubts from the very beginning. Special effects experts, including the legendary Stan Winston, pointed out numerous flaws. The autopsy techniques shown in the film were judged amateurish and unprofessional by pathologists. The way the camera moved seemed too cinematic rather than documentary. Over the years, the film's credibility was steadily questioned, and Ray Santilli's story about it changed. He eventually admitted that the original tapes were in very poor condition and that what had been publicly shown was largely a reconstruction of the damaged fragments. The final blow to the film's authenticity came in 2017, when British filmmaker and illusionist Spiros Malaris publicly stated that he had directed and created the entire film on Santilli's commission. In a detailed confession, he revealed the entire hoax. He disclosed that the alien body was a mannequin created by sculptor and special effects expert John Humphreys. The autopsy was filmed not in a secret military base, but in an apartment in London. The alleged internal organs were made from sheep brains, chicken intestines, and raspberry jam to simulate coagulated blood. Malaris even revealed that he and his brother played the roles of some of the pathologists in white protective suits. In light of these testimonies, the alien autopsy film is now widely and almost universally regarded as an elaborate and highly profitable fabrication. There is no credible, independent confirmation of its authenticity. Although it was ultimately exposed as a hoax, its impact on pop culture and the Roswell mythology is undeniable. For years, it cemented the iconic image of the gray alien in the global imagination and visually brought to life the darkest aspect of the legend, becoming one of the most famous and effective hoaxes in history. Impact on culture and the Roswell legacy. Regardless of what actually happened on the New Mexico desert, the Roswell incident has transcended the boundaries of historical debate to become a global cultural phenomenon. Its power no longer lies in the facts, but in the myth it created, a myth so potent that it has permanently shaped the way modern civilization thinks about extraterrestrial life and its relationship with government. Its greatest legacy is the creation of the UFO crash archetype. Roswell became the fundamental template, a narrative blueprint to which all subsequent similar stories are inevitably compared. It established a complete, self-contained mythology incorporating all the key elements: a crash in a remote, inaccessible location, its accidental discovery by civilian witnesses, and the rapid, organized intervention of the military. The Roswell story also defined what a cover-up operation looks like. It introduced the public to the concept of official disinformation, offering a mundane yet plausible explanation, intimidating witnesses in the name of national security, and secretly transporting evidence to classified facilities where research on alien technology is conducted. Every subsequent account of a recovered crashed object, whether in Brazil, Russia, or elsewhere, has been filtered through the lens of New Mexico, becoming a variant of this same powerful foundational story. Another equally lasting legacy of Roswell is the crystallization and global popularization of a specific image of extraterrestrial beings. Although popular culture had previously imagined various types of alien visitors, from grotesque monsters to the little green men, these depictions were often vague, caricatured, and inconsistent. The narrative surrounding Roswell introduced and solidified in the public imagination the archetype of the gray alien as the default form of extraterrestrial life. This image, based on witness accounts describing the allegedly recovered bodies, was remarkably consistent and distinctive. It depicted a small, fragile body, an oversized, hairless head, and most strikingly, enormous black almond-shaped eyes that appeared emotionless yet deeply penetrating. The moment that ultimately cemented this iconography was the aforementioned alien autopsy film. Even though it turned out to be a hoax, its visual impact was immeasurable. Millions of people saw for the first time a tangible, realistic depiction of a being that had previously existed only in verbal descriptions. The image proved so compelling that it permanently displaced older conceptions and became the visual standard. From the X-Files to countless films and books, and even in the testimonies of those claiming alien abductions, the figure of the gray alien has become a universal symbol of extraterrestrial life, inseparably linked in the collective consciousness with the mystery hidden in the New Mexico desert. Its impact on popular culture is perhaps the most enduring and tangible legacy of all. The incident ceased to be merely a topic for historians and UFO researchers and became an inexhaustible source of inspiration for creators worldwide, cementing its place in global consciousness. References to Roswell appear in hundreds, if not thousands, of films, television shows, books, and video games. In cinema, the most spectacular example is Independence Day, where the entire strategy to defend Earth relies on knowledge and technology recovered from an alien spacecraft that crashed and was stored in Area 51 since 1947. Yet no work has integrated the Roswell myth as deeply and comprehensively as the iconic series The X-Files. In its universe, the events in New Mexico were not a single episode, but a fundamental occurrence, a kind of original sin that gave rise to a vast, multi-layered government conspiracy aimed at hiding the truth about aliens and collaborating with them. The show's entire mythology, from the MJ-12 syndicate to hybridization programs, grew directly from the cover-up of the Roswell incident. In this way, the name Roswell ceased to be merely a geographic designation. It became a cultural shorthand, powerful and instantly recognizable. Uttering the word in a cultural context immediately activates a constellation of associations in the audience's mind: conspiracy, government cover-up, secret bases hidden in the desert, and the ultimate mystery of extraterrestrial life. It is a contemporary foundational myth for the entire UFO narrative, a platform upon which successive generations of creators build their stories about humanity's greatest hidden secret. Beyond its influence on the global imagination and culture, the Roswell incident has had a profoundly tangible, material impact on the town that unwittingly lent it its name. After decades of being a sleepy, agricultural desert town, Roswell transformed into the global capital of ufology, converting the mysterious legend into a highly profitable tourism industry. The town has literally made a fortune from the incident, becoming a pilgrimage destination for UFO enthusiasts from around the world. At the center of this transformation is the International UFO Museum and Research Center, which collects artifacts, documents, and witness accounts related to the case. The institution functions not only as an archive for researchers, but also as a powerful magnet attracting visitors. Every year, on the anniversary of the July 1947 events, a UFO festival is held, turning the quiet streets into a lively carnival with parades, lectures, costume contests, and concerts, drawing thousands of tourists and generating significant revenue for the local economy.
The city's visual landscape has been completely dominated by this single myth. Extraterrestrial themes have permeated every aspect of daily life. Street lamps are shaped like stylized alien heads, murals depicting flying saucers decorate building walls, and even global fast food chains in their local Roswell branches often feature UFO-shaped buildings. Almost every local business, from auto shops to restaurants and motels, incorporates references to aliens and unidentified flying objects in its name or logo, offering souvenirs and merchandise connected to the legend. In this way, Roswell has achieved something remarkable. It has fully integrated its identity with this controversial story, transforming it into its greatest asset and brand. Regardless of whether it was a balloon or a spacecraft that crashed in the desert, the town of Roswell has become ultimate proof that the power of myth can be stronger than truth, capable of building a real, thriving economy on the foundation of a single, enduring mystery. The Roswell incident is a fascinating mix of facts, misinterpretations, exaggerations, and possibly deliberate disinformation woven into an inseparable knot that could not be untangled for over 70 years. This story is like a modern epic in which two fundamentally different visions of reality collide. On one hand, there is a prosaic narrative grounded in the hard realities of history and technology. It is the story of a secret military project, born in the paranoid atmosphere of the early Cold War, whose debris landed in the hands of a world completely unprepared to encounter the cutting edge of military technology. In this version of events, the media fascination with the newly minted phenomenon of flying saucers became the spark that transformed a simple, though classified incident into a global sensation. Any further cover-up did not stem from a desire to hide contact with extraterrestrial life, but from the need to protect a priceless intelligence program from enemy spies. On the other hand, there is a second narrative, far more powerful in its effect on the human imagination. It is the decades-long legend, expanded by successive generations, of the first tangible contact with extraterrestrial intelligence. It is a story of monumental secrecy, meticulously concealed by the world's most powerful nation. In this myth, every element has its place. Every witness plays a role in a grand cosmic drama, and every act of government disinformation becomes yet another proof of the immense conspiracy designed either to protect humanity or, conversely, to keep it in ignorance.
The ultimate, indisputable truth about Roswell will likely remain forever hidden somewhere in the elusive space between these two extreme narratives. Key witnesses have passed away. The alleged evidence has long disappeared or been destroyed, and memories have blurred and become contaminated. Perhaps the most important aspect of this story is no longer what actually fell from the sky onto the dusty desert in July 1947, but what the event awakened in human hearts and minds. Roswell has become a mirror, reflecting our deepest fears and desires. It is a symbol of our enduring longing for the extraordinary, for proof that the world is more than a mere material and predictable reality. It has become the ultimate argument for those who have lost trust in authority and official narratives, a testament that those in power always conceal the most important truths from us. Most importantly, Roswell remains a living echo of the timeless, fundamental question humanity asks when looking at the stars. Are we alone in the universe? Asked plainly whether the story of Roswell is truth or myth, a definitive answer can only come from verifiable evidence and historical consensus. In light of all available facts, in-depth analyses and documents declassified over the years, the scientific and historical assessment is clear. The Roswell incident is a myth that arose from the framework of a real historical event. It is important to clearly distinguish between these two concepts. The historical fact is that in July 1947, an object crashed in the New Mexico desert. It was a secret, highly advanced military balloon for its time, part of Project Mogul designed to monitor Soviet nuclear tests. Because the project was classified at the highest level, the United States military, after an initial erroneous press release, deliberately undertook a disinformation campaign to conceal the object's true nature, replacing the truth about a secret spy balloon with the far safer story of a routine weather balloon. These are historical facts, supported by military documentation. The myth, on the other hand, is the interpretation of this event as the crash of an alien spacecraft. All elements forming the foundation of this story rely on evidence that does not withstand critical analysis. Testimonies from key witnesses, such as Jesse Marcel, emerged only 30 years after the event, making them highly susceptible to memory distortion, suggestion, and the influence of an evolving legend. Later, even more dramatic accounts about alien bodies in the second crash site appeared decades after the fact, often without confirmation from other independent sources. The most sensational and tangible evidence, such as the famous alien autopsy film, was revealed to be an indisputable and admitted hoax created for profit. Crucially, there is a complete lack of any physical, examinable evidence supporting the claim of extraterrestrial origin. Despite 70 years of searches and investigations, no fragment of a supposed alien spacecraft, no piece of metal with impossible properties has ever been submitted for independent scientific verification. All original descriptions of strange materials have found logical, mundane counterparts in components of the Project Mogul balloon, from reinforced tape with symbols to radar reflector foil. Roswell is, therefore, a phenomenon in which the historical kernel of truth, the crash of a secret military object, and the ensuing disinformation operation has been entirely overshadowed by a powerful, fascinating, yet ultimately false narrative. The truth lies in the incident itself, the military conspiracy aimed at protecting an earthly secret, and the story of how these events sparked human imagination. The myth consists of the alien spacecraft, the bodies, and the global conspiracy to conceal contact with another civilization.